Hey friend, and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan and you are on my homestead and in my kitchen here in Wyoming. And today we are going to be focusing on all things pumpkin. It is currently early October, which means there's no lack of pumpkins going around. We have a local stand out by our house that has pumpkins. I know the grocery stores have been having a lot of pumpkin deals. This is probably the time your garden is bringing in a lot of pumpkins. So it's the perfect time to start incorporating that into our recipes. Now, we did plant pumpkin, however, they took so long to germinate and we had some issues with them. So we got one pumpkin and it's about this big and it is still solid green. There's absolutely no way it's going to ripen in time. However, it's not all a loss. We can give that to our chickens, our goats. They will love it. But for cooking, we decided that we were going to have to rely on store-bought this year. Now, my parents were in town visiting. They were down in Colorado and they have Sprouts down there and they had pie pumpkins on sale for, I think it was 10 cents or 20 cents per pumpkin. So my parents stocked up. I think they brought us about 20 pumpkins. And that is because pumpkins are great natural dewormers for animals as well. So here, I've gone ahead and pureed up a bunch. We made some soup with some. So we've probably gone through about 5 or so pumpkins. But what we don't feed to the animals, I want to make sure we are incorporating them into recipes. So today we are going to do exactly that. I have 2 super yummy recipes we're going to make together. First one is going to be pumpkin cinnamon rolls. Second one is going to be your classic pumpkin chocolate chip bread, and that's because we are going on a pheasant hunt this weekend. And what is better than having pumpkin bread on a long drive? So we're gonna make those 2, and then for dinner tonight, I have some of our sausage that we raised currently defrosting, and we are gonna make a pumpkin pasta dish together as well. So first thing we're gonna do is get going on our pumpkin cinnamon rolls. And the reason for that is because it takes a good amount of time for the dough to rise. We're only gonna rise once, so that should only take about an hour or so, which isn't bad. So while this dough is rising, we are then going to get going on our dinner and our pumpkin bread. So that's why we're gonna start with this. Now, before I started recording, all I did a couple days ago actually, was I roasted up some pumpkins. I just cut them in half, took the seeds out, put them on a baking dish at 350 until they were soft, tender with a fork. Then I put them in my blender today and just blended them. If you're not using a pie pumpkin, definitely make sure that you are giving your pumpkin time to drain. If it's really watery, you don't want to put that watery pumpkin into our recipes. So if that's the case, all you'll need to do is either hang it in some cheesecloth or you can put it in a colander and put a bowl below it. So definitely make sure you're doing that if you're just using like your garden pumpkins, but if you're using a pie pumpkin, it shouldn't be an issue. Into our mixer, we're gonna add in 1/2 cup of warm milk. And then to that, I'm gonna add in 2.5 teaspoons of instant yeast. So there's 1. And I keep my yeast in the freezer, and I've probably had this yeast for a very, very long time. But it doesn't go bad if you keep it in the freezer. Then we need 1/4 teaspoon of salt. 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, packed. This one. I need to get more brown sugar. 2. I'm gonna give that a good little mix. And then to that, I'm gonna add in 1 cup of pumpkin puree, which I know feels weird to add pumpkin to a dough, but trust the process. There's about 1 cup. I need this to get it out. Perfect. And then we're gonna need 1 egg as well. That's all of our wet ingredients, so let's give that a mix. And then to this dough, I'm also going to add in 1/4 cup of butter. These were just sitting out, coming to room temperature. or softening because I had them in the freezer. And since it's still on the harder side, I'm gonna just cut it to help it incorporate a little bit easier. And I'm actually gonna use the center pieces because they are way softer, and we're just gonna eyeball a half a stick. Next, we need 2.5 cups of flour. And usually I have this in a container, but this is a new one, so I'm just gonna use it out of the bag. I know, normally you wanna spoon it in, but that's all right, we'll be fine. So this is just a 1/2 cup. There's 1, 4, and 5. We're gonna give that a mix. And as you can see, it's still really wet, so we're gonna add in another 1/2 cup. The whole recipe will go for about 3.5 to 4 cups, but I'm just gonna slowly add more. All right, so we're starting to get close, so I'm gonna transfer over to my dough hook. You can tell we're gonna need a little more. We're still on the wet side. My dough is looking nice and soft, so I'm going to go ahead and get it added in to my bowl here. And I like to just spray my hands because I find that it helps me work with the dough a lot easier. And because we have butter in here, I don't want to mess with it too much, so I'm just gonna shape it into a ball. And you can see we have our pumpkin pieces in there. All right, I am going to just put this in this oiled bowl. I'm gonna throw this into the oven on proof for about an hour, and while that proofs, we're gonna get going on the other recipes. All right, first thing we need to do is cream together butter and sugar. So this is a 1/2 stick of butter. And we'll add 2 cups of sugar. This is a 1/2 cup, so we'll do 4 of these. Because we're gonna do chocolate chips, I'm gonna do a little bit less. Cream that together. Okay, and then to that, we're gonna add in 2 cups of pumpkin, or a little under 2 cups, 1 15-ounce can. We'll call that good. Then we need 3 eggs. Look how orange that yolk is. There's 1, there's 3. And 2 teaspoons of vanilla, which we always just measure with our heart. 1, call that 2. It's probably a little generous. Mix this together. And while that continues to mix, I'm gonna add in 1/2 teaspoon. That's close. It was a 1/2 tablespoon I almost used. 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. We need a teaspoon of salt. Balance out that sweetness. 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm just gonna measure with my heart. 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Perfect, then we'll stop that. We need 2 3/4 cups of flour. There's 1/2. I'm gonna fluff this flour up again. And we need 1/2 cup of milk. All right, now we're gonna fold in our chocolate chips. Spray our loaf pan. We'll start with 6 of these. And we have just a little bit left here, so I'm just going to move it into the loaf pan. All right, into a 350-degree oven these go. This will probably be about 45 minutes, and this will probably be, we'll check it at 15. We're gonna get started on dinner now. So for our pumpkin pasta, first thing we need to do is cut our onion, and then we're gonna brown some sausage. All right. All right, my sausage is brown and my onions are translucent, so I'm gonna throw in like 5 cloves of garlic. And this is frozen, so we'll just let that defrost and brown just a little bit. I'll check on our muffins here. Turn the heat down and we're gonna add in about 2 cups of pumpkin or so. And then we'll stir this in, and then I'm just gonna let this sit. I'll turn the heat off and we'll wait for some of this pasta water to be ready. And in the meantime, I think our muffins are done. I can smell them. I'll let them sit here for a couple minutes and then we'll put them on a cooling rack. Go ahead and get our pasta cooking. This is what I'm using. All right, this pasta is done. We're gonna save about a cup of pasta water. And then drain off the rest. All right, to loosen this up, we're just gonna add a little bit of our water. Then we have about 1/2 cup of 1/2 and 1/2. And this was previously frozen. Okay, then to this we're gonna add some salt, pepper, a tiny bit of nutmeg, and some thyme. Now we'll transfer it over into our pasta. And there is dinner. Our dough has proofed. I'm gonna set the oven to 350 degrees. And then we are going to roll that out. And I'm actually gonna spray my hands too. I find that I prefer the spray over flour. I just hate the feeling of flour on my hands. So, I'm gonna do my best to roll this out. And we want it to be about the size of this cutting board, as even as possible. It's always easier said than done, right? Okay, we're gonna let this sit for just a minute. Oops, rolled it on top of itself. Okay, and while that sits, let's get our filling mixed up. So I just have a stick of butter, 1/3 cup of pumpkin puree. I'm just gonna slice this into little pieces so it's a little easier to mix. And to this, we're gonna add 3/4 cups of brown sugar. Ideally, this would be packed, but I'm about out of brown sugar, so I'm just gonna do our best. 3. We want 1½ teaspoons or so of cinnamon. And then about 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. I always go a little lighter because I'm not crazy about nutmeg. I think it adds a good flavor, but I'm not totally crazy about it. This is one of those recipes where you're like, no wonder cinnamon rolls are so darn good. A lot of butter and a lot of sugar. Okay. Let's bring this back. And we're gonna just spread this all over. We want it to be, we'll leave about 1/2 inch around the edges so it doesn't come falling out. All right, now we're gonna do our best to tightly roll. And then we're just going to take a sharp knife and slice them. Into the oven these go. Final thing we're gonna do is get our cream cheese frosting made. So I just have 4 ounces of softened cream cheese, and then I added in about 1/2 stick of butter. Mix those together. Then we're gonna add in about 1 teaspoon of vanilla. About 1 cup of powdered sugar and 1 teaspoon or so of milk. And this will get a little bit more runny when it goes on to the cinnamon rolls because they'll be warm. So I'm gonna call that good. All right, friends, and just like that, we are done for the day. We had a huge success, got rid of about 6 cups, I think it was, of pumpkin. And I can tell you those muffins are a huge hit. Sam's already eaten 4 of them. So, I mean, there's only good things in them. What's there not to like? So I am going to call it a day here. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing if you haven't already. And I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for being here. Bye, friend.